Ken Bernstein is a principal city planner for the Los Angeles Department of City Planning, where he serves as manager of the city's Office of Historic Resources. He also directs LA's historic preservation policies, serves as lead staff member for the city's Cultural Heritage Commission, and has led the creation of a comprehensive LA Historic Preservation Program. Welcome, Ken Bernstein, to Lacurrents. We're so glad to have you on, Ken.
Oh, thanks so much for having me here.
What was the first preservation project you worked on in the city of LA?
Oh, well, at the Conservancy, we were involved in trying to advocate for preserving often threatened historic resources. We were involved during my early years with the Conservancy in trying to preserve the oldest cathedral in the city, St. Vibiana Cathedral from 1876, that had been threatened, and actually demolition had started on that soon before I joined the Conservancy, and we led a successful fight to preserve that, have it adaptively reused as an event space for the city, and then really also working on much of the downtown revitalization, the adaptive reuse, the conversion of historic buildings downtown to housing in the late 90s, early 2000s, generating thousands of new housing units in downtown.
Why preserve? Why not just, it would be easier to tear some of these buildings down and start from scratch.
Yeah, well, I often like to say that preservation is really about managing change. It's not about stopping change from happening.
Right.
It's really, if you think about it more largely, in a dynamic city, and there's few cities that are more ever-changing, more dynamic than the city of Los Angeles, preservation is really a way of keeping what makes Los Angeles in the first place. What are those distinctive qualities, those distinctive places that define our city? I often like to cite another preservationist, a gentleman named Tom Mays, who is from the National Trust for Historic Preservation, who talks about the value of preservation as being about authenticity, continuity, and community. That our historic buildings have this authenticity, a beauty, a character that can't be replicated with new construction. They give us continuity, that connection between past, present, and future, kind of anchoring us, orienting us in a world that can be increasingly disorienting.
Yeah.
And then community. It's our historic buildings and our historic places that have this reservoir of goodwill built up over decades or hundreds of years in some cases, and that connect us to one another and help build community. So authenticity, continuity, and community, those are values that we get with our older and historic places that we can't replicate with new construction.
How does a building get designated as, not just historical, but need to be preserved, and so we're going to, move this way rather than tear it down?
Well, our office is the professional staff for the city's Cultural Heritage Commission, which is the 5-member mayoral appointed commission that makes recommendations to the City Council on what does get designated as a local landmark, or what we call historic cultural monuments in the city. And we have now almost 1,300 historic cultural monuments.
1,300?
Going back, our program, and I think many people don't know, LA had one of the earliest local historic designation programs in the country. Before New York, we were 3 years before New York City, before San Francisco and Chicago. So while LA has this reputation of not caring about its history, we actually were a historic preservation pioneer. So we make the professional staff recommendations to the Cultural Heritage Commission. Anyone can nominate a site as a historic cultural monument. The City Council often sometimes initiates sites for nomination, and the City Council has the last word as well, again, based on our professional recommendations and the work of the Cultural Heritage Commission investigating those sites.
The African American Historic Places.
Yes.
Okay, what is that? You had a kickoff recently for that.
We did, and this is really kind of a outgrowth and continuation of some of the work we did with Getty on Survey LA, and really looking at more broadly at issues of equity and inclusion in historic preservation. And despite all the work that we've done on our Historic Cultural Monument Program, on Survey LA to identify historic resources, still there's a tremendous disparity in what gets designated in the city. The vast majority of our historic cultural monuments over the last 6 decades have been sites that have architectural significance primarily, and we have not despite the fact that our program allows for it, always been as inclusive. Only about 4% of our historic cultural monuments reflect associations with African American history in the city. We just kicked off the African American Historic Places project officially with the first public event this past month at St. Elmo Village, which is a wonderful cultural and arts center in the Mid-City neighborhood. And we were honored that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar actually was our featured speaker, and he himself has been very passionate about preserving African American heritage and has a deep connection to Central Avenue and its jazz history. And we collected community stories. We had a community storytelling event there to collect stories and memories from community elders and longtime community activists about some of the sites that we hope to feature in the project. So we're very excited about the direction of the project to, again, really look more deeply and be more intentional about equity and inclusion in historic preservation.
So once something is designated as historic and sort of has that hanging on it, what happens then? I mean, you mentioned with the African American Historic Places project. Is it the same for all projects?
Yeah, historic cultural monument designation or a historic district like an HPOZ does provide additional review of proposed changes or alterations. Contrary to popular belief, it doesn't mean if a building is designated as a city landmark, historic cultural monument in LA, that it can never be demolished. It actually can.
Oh, it can.
But it's a much higher bar. There's a hurdle of additional review by the Cultural Heritage Commission. Also in California, preparation of an environmental impact report under our state environmental law, and looking at alternatives to demolition and the feasibility of those alternatives. So it's about being thoughtful about what change is acceptable and what isn't, and creates a public process to evaluate those types of changes.
You also have an Indigenous Peoples Historic Context Statement for the city. What is that?
We're just beginning work on that, and that is really recognizing that that has been a glaring oversight in terms of our historic preservation program. So we're just beginning to engage with some of our key local tribes and experts in this field to figure out how we can take the type of framework that we've done for Survey LA and work that we've done with our Latino communities, many of our Asian American communities. We did a similar historic framework, historic context statement for LGBT history that was the first of its kind of any city in the country. How do we begin to, again, kind of rectify some of these disparities and begin to more comprehensively deal with the places that are important and meaningful to the First Peoples of Los Angeles, and make sure that in our historic preservation program we're telling all of the LA stories, the stories of all of our communities, and not only the triumphal stories of the city, but the aspects of our past that are challenging and difficult, that our historic preservation program needs to reflect all of those stories and those perspectives.
You wrote a book. It's Preserving Los Angeles, How Historic Places Can Transform America's Cities. It's beautiful inside and out, and it's very well researched. Was this something that you had been working on for years, or did you just finally say, you know what, I've got all this knowledge, let's put it in a book?
It was more the latter, and the research really was more of an outgrowth of my work with the city and really trying to showcase the work that collectively, and again, this wasn't about me, again, we have an incredible team at the Office of Historic Resources that has really done the work. I'm just providing some strategic guidance and direction, but really wanted to showcase the collective work that we've done in Los Angeles, and this, as the subtitle says, also talk more broadly about how historic preservation, historic places can be a positive force for change in cities.
All right, Ken, if people want to get more information about what's going on in your office, about historic preservation, is there a website they can log on to?
There are actually two I can give you. One is our planning department website, which is planning.lacity.org, and the Office of Historic Resources portion, there's a drop-down menu under historic preservation that has all the information on our program. But then we also have a comprehensive inventory of historic places in the city called Historic Places LA, and that's at historicplacesla.org, and that's a searchable and mappable website that has all of the resources, even beyond what's in the book, everything we discovered through Survey LA, as well as all of our designated historic resources in every community. So I encourage people to explore Historic Places LA.
That's great. Ken Bernstein, thank you so much for coming on today. So glad to have you. Such a pleasure to learn more about historic LA. Appreciate you coming down.
Oh, thanks so much.